It's a good opening question, and I guess there's a lot in it because there's definitely no one answer to what are the things that you should be tracking. But I guess I kind of always break it down into sort of areas or buckets, and obviously the financial metrics, they're reasonably standard across most businesses, right? And I think if we think about agencies and particularly agencies and where they generate their money, it's obviously the margins associated with the work, whether it be permanent, contract, payroll, fixed term, temp, there's obviously a different array. But I guess it's from a financial perspective, always trying to understand, what your sort of target state or your goal state is.
Welcome to the Tech Savvy Recruiter, the podcast for recruitment and staffing agency owners keen to explore the tech innovations reshaping our industry. I'm Andrew Roger from RecMate.
And I'm Belinda Kerr from Recruitment Garage, and together we're your hosts, bringing you a stellar lineup of tech experts ready to help you understand and, more importantly, benefit from the increasing array of tech available to you today.
Hi and welcome to another episode of the Tech Savvy Recruiter. We're fortunate to have Kamal.ai from Kamal.ai with us to talk through all things financial and metrics in the recruitment world. Kamal is a new product to the recruitment space and integrates with many platforms to pull workflow activity and also financial activity into one's place. Something many are doing with multiple applications and, as we know in the recruitment space, hundreds of spreadsheets at a time. Welcome, Guy. Did I get that all correct? Perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about yourself and Kamal too. Plus, also, where did the name come from?
Sure. No, well, look, thank you very much for having me on the podcast, Belinda and Andrew. Very excited to share some secrets, but also, So Kamal, you kind of nailed it. Kamal essentially is an integrated platform for recruitment agencies to help them understand how to run their businesses better, and by utilising all the different data sources that come from the common suite of tools, and seamlessly sort of serve that information up to really point you in the right direction. And that kind of leads to where the name Kamal came from. So Kamal is essentially an ancient navigation device that was used in sort of the Arabic era or the Persian era, I believe, and the sort of bit of wood, bit of string, pointed to the stars, and it kind of points you in the right direction. So kind of draws upon that and speaks nicely to what the product's trying to achieve, which is to help agencies go in the right direction. So there you go.
I love it so much. It's a great story.
Well, I know, right?
Those were the days. I think. Yeah, it's an amazing story, and you guys have really rocketed ahead. I know that you've been talking with a lot of recruitment companies and have got some really welcome conversations underway, and I know you've got a couple of signed contracts already in place, which is really exciting for such a young business. And I understand why, after seeing the product a number of weeks ago now, it just puts an answer to many of those questions there. But we'll get to a little bit more about the specifics of it maybe towards the end of the podcast. You can give us a little bit of a plug. One of the key questions I've got for you is around having a chat with the audience around what you think, some of the key financial metrics that recruitment businesses should be looking at, and tracking and assessing and talking with their teams so that they can, help overall performance and obviously leading to productivity of recruitment firms.
Yeah, no, it's a good opening question, and I guess there's a lot in it because there's definitely no one answer to what are the things that you should be tracking. But I guess I kind of always break it down into sort of areas or buckets, and obviously the financial metrics, they're reasonably standard across most businesses, right? And I think if we think about agencies and particularly agencies and where they generate their money, it's obviously the margins associated with the work, whether it be permanent, contract, payroll, fixed term, temp, there's obviously a different array. But I guess it's from a financial perspective, always trying to understand, what your sort of target state or your goal state is. And a lot of the time that will come down to, where you're at and what age and stage your business is at. So, there are customers that we're talking to at the moment that are in the latter stages of their journey and I guess, on the path to looking for an exit. And I suppose, the metrics that you're looking at there versus as a startup and what you're focusing on can be quite different. So I guess, we always sort of tie it to, or my thinking is that the metrics or performance metrics that support a business should always trickle down from the financial side. So, personally, I've always seen gross margin and sort of EBIT percentage being sort of the two big metrics that you want to be tracking and understanding to really understand the health of your business. That real understanding of OPEX versus, your cost of goods sold versus your revenue line, and acknowledging that, as you scale, it isn't linear. I wish it was, it'd be great. But, the reality is there's those ramps, and then those real moments where you have to invest a whole much more in to get to that next ramp. And I guess, having some really clear visibility around that and making sure, most businesses obviously are leveraging a Xero or an MYOB or a Business Central or something to track this information. But I suppose, the real thing is to go, what are my key numbers or the key sort of goal state percentages that I want to achieve? And I think, from speaking with M&A and other sort of professionals in the recruitment space that, kind of understand the health of an agency. A good metric to track is definitely that gross margin percentage. And if you're operating around that 30% mark, that's kind of like a gold standard. We kind of see that as a really nice measurable number and an easy number to kind of work against. And again, from an EBIT percentage as well, anything that's sort of around that 5% and up level is a really good number to be kind of striving for. So, and then once you've got that, you can then start build out, okay, what needs to happen at the owner level, at the team lead level, and at the consultant level to support those numbers. And I think, another metric to really look at is obviously profitability per head. And sometimes that may seem simple in terms of how to calculate, but obviously the variance is associated with different types of consultants and obviously the revenues are associated. Actually, it's really important to really make sure you're capturing all the relevant pieces of information to really understand that productivity and profitability per head number, to then be able to sort of work back from that number to then go, right, how does that relate to achieving an overall gross margin percentage or EBIT percentage?
I think typically it's been hard for teams to collate all that information and share it amongst the team members that they want to share that with. And a definite trend over the years that I've been in this space is a lot more transparency into business performance and the numbers. So I can run my desk professionally as a recruitment consultant, knowing exactly how profitable my seat is. And I think companies that are doing that are definitely leapfrogging other companies who seem to think, we need to keep that all sort of secret squirrel. That's for the execs to know, and we'll let the workers know what their targets are, and they can just run to the targets, right?
The classic APIs.
That's it. That's it. Which definitely has a place. I've seen many businesses that think they don't need KPIs in place, and they travel in a certain trajectory, not usually as quickly as others that do have some good firm numbers and transparency in place there.
Yeah, and that kind of leads us on to, let's talk about performance metrics and, is it changing? So things like such as, placement ratios or time to fill, how do they, and the traditional ones, how do they tie into the success of recruitment firm today, and how do you think we should be, or how do you think companies should be optimising them, Guy?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. And I think, I've always, when I've talked about sort of performance metrics, I guess the most common and well-known use of data in recruitment agencies historically has been around KPIs. And, most of us who've plied our trade and maybe some of the big globals, are familiar with the modelling and sort of the ratios of success. X number of calls leads to X number of meetings, which leads to X number of, jobs and so on. And I think, look, that has still a place in how you track performance. But I guess, our view around it is why you might be tracking those numbers versus just tracking for the sake of knowing that that's a model that has worked for years and is just kind of a known thing, because every single industry, every single sector, every single type of recruitment is different, and the needs of those consultants and clients and candidates in that space can differ. And so, I've always said to any agency, it's really important to understand, selecting some key metrics that are relevant to you. And an example for that would be, if you're in the exec search space, obviously call volumes and those sorts of things are not going to be things that you're looking at. Reality is the type of recruitment and the type of engagement is quite different. It's going to be much more around, the quality of the interaction, or, tracking things that are much more aligned to that industry type. Whereas, in the blue collar temp world, for example, when you need to go and find 20 labourers to start on Monday, that's obviously much more volume based. And so then you want to be starting to look at, okay, well, it is about the volume of output and ratios and success ratios along the journey. But I think the challenge is not about necessarily the metric itself. It's what do you do with that metric? What do you do with that information? So, most agencies who may run a more KPI driven model, most consultants that sit within that space will do it because they're told to do it. And they might over time understand the reasoning why that is, but actually talking about it from day one and going, the reason why we are tracking these things is because then we can start to optimize our processes and optimize our performance. Classic contingent perm recruitment, for example, where you're only paid upon success, you want to really make sure that every single hour of your day is on the highest yield activities. And so, tracking things like time to fill rates, and then being able to actually understand that on the basis of a contact within a client versus a client, for example, because as we know, a lot of businesses, it's not necessarily about the company itself. It's about an individual within that company and your success ratios that relate to that individual. And so, I know it's a long-winded way of saying the metrics are important, but actually it's what you do with those metrics, and then it's the insights, it's the what next, it's the what does that mean? And I suppose performance metrics should be a line of inquiry or spark some interest.
Something I see people struggle with now is that because so much more business is coming from marketing, not just sales, and we know that it's tipped from it used to be 70% sales, 30% marketing. Now it's the other way around. So you've got so much of the business is coming through marketing, and we're telling consultants to be on social media and to build their profiles and all these sorts of things that are kind of muddying the waters when it comes to KPIs. I know this is kind of a little bit left of centre from what we're talking about, but I know you're in recruitment as well. I'm just keen, now that you've got both those hats, how do you feel that plays into things?
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. And I think, the concept of performance metrics and applying that to marketing, right? Performance marketing is now the future of marketing, right? I think not gone are the days of marketing teams being detached from sales, but, every marketing activity within recruitment tends to need to have an ROI. And so, any form of activity that you're doing in that space, you want to be, again, tracking and recording and seeing ratios of success. And I think there's always value in branding. Brand is pivotal. But I think, again, in recruitment and being brutally honest, I think clients and candidates, they may have an affiliation with a brand, but really they have an affiliation with the person and the relationship with that individual consultant. And that's where the real value sits. And so, as an individual consultant within a business, it's how you leverage that brand to then be able to start to build out some performance metrics for yourself around, your socials, your marketing and those sorts of things, and going, when I'm posting something on LinkedIn, I'm not just posting it because, again, someone's told me I need to post once a week for brand purposes. No, it's what am I posting and what am I trying to achieve? And then being able to look at those impressions, look at those click-through rates, and then understand, actually, I've got some leads off the back of that, because if someone's clicking on my post, they're interested in what I've got to say. And so it's another opportunity to pick up the phone and have a conversation. So I think, again, metrics, whether it's financial, sales, operational, marketing, I think the world that we're operating in, because we've got access to so much information and data, because ultimately most of our interactions are digital in some way, shape or form, even the ones on the phone these days where you've got, voice AIs and all the rest of it recording everything. Your ability to really hone your focus is just so much more.
Yeah, I think, and as you highlighting, a lot more is trackable within the marketing world and tieable down to an outcome if you've got that set up correctly. So I think gone is the adage around, 50% of my marketing budget can be wasted, or we don't know, what's happened to that, right? So that old adage there, I think it's, a lot harder to not be able to track stuff. Yeah. Yes. And then if you can mix that in with your financial modelling and tracking and success and reporting, then you can start seeing some really interesting trends come through from certain activities. Might be a certain lead time of a month or two, but once something is dropped, you see a spike somewhere. In terms, might be inbound calls or something similar.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a learn, right? It's a behaviour, and I guess it's not necessarily natural as well for a lot of people. I think reality is a lot of recruitment businesses are founded upon great salespeople, right? Recruitment is a sales discipline, whether we like it or not. However people might fight against that at the moment, but it's a sales role, right? And I think the most businesses have come from that, and so they're not necessarily data driven. They're not necessarily looking at things from an optimization and operational standpoint. That comes later, and so helping and providing an easy way to be able to start to consume this information is really key as well, and not trying to do too much. Because I think that's the other thing too is, just pick one or two things. Don't try and go, right, I want to be data driven tomorrow. It's like, no, let's focus on a number or a metric or a thing and go, right, let's do that really well first.
Yeah.
Because I've seen many, and I've fallen into that trap, Yeah, that's it. You build the muscle, right? Because you get excited. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's interesting. And then you never really get the value out of that data set that you've just gone and investigated because you haven't really given it its full
potential. Got a nice spreadsheet showing you everything.
And a nice spreadsheet that's showing everything. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. It gets opened once every while. But and I think the other thing too. Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah. But I think the other thing too is knowing that the added old saying is obviously rubbish in, rubbish out, right? And I think again, challenge of the recruitment world is data quality is always going to be a problem. Until such time that every single interaction is automated, which is probably not far away. I think there's definitely large chunks of that recruitment process now that can be populated into an ATS or a CRM quite well. But I guess that data quality piece is so important to then be able to know what is insightful and what isn't insightful, which again kind of talks to focus on the things that your team or your consultants are definitely putting in the system. That they're always going to put a placement in the system. And that placement record generally will be accurate because that's how they get paid. So, top, most highest quality data point, start there. And then you can start
to placement record generally.
Yeah, placement record, exactly. Where the money's coming from, and that is always a safe bet to start. And then once you, again, as you say, Belinda, building the muscle of going, right, the consultants are seeing value in something here. And now we ask them to do the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. And then slowly but surely your team's starting to really see the value of putting a certain data point in the system because they're seeing a result off the back of it.
It's definitely an evolutionary thing that we see as businesses grow. To your point, Guy, most recruitment firms are kicked off by a couple of really good sales professionals. They join forces, start recruitment company X, and then they get a couple of people in, that grows to a few more, and then they're doing a little bit less on the tools, more on the management side, and that's where they go, oh, actually we need to have a bit of system process and tracking and financial modelling and understanding of what we are doing as a firm so I can keep building my team and keep delivering success to them. And sometimes that light bulb moment happens earlier than others, but eventually it does happen around. We do need to be a bit more data driven than we have in the past, and An encouraging thing for those listening today is definitely we've seen when you do start looking at the numbers through a digestible lens, that's easy for the recruiter, the team leader, the senior execs to read. You automatically see more data going into the system, because if you're having data conversations on a weekly basis saying, hey, Andrew, let's look at the week that was, the week that is this week coming, and what your future weeks look like over the next 2 to 3 weeks. And let's just look at the system. Okay, if the data's not in the system there, then we're going to have a pretty short conversation between me and my boss Guy, right?
Yeah.
Guy will tell me to go back to the desk and put the data in.
Yeah.
And the data can be very different to what your gut feel is. That's what I found when I started getting good with data.
Yeah.
It was like I think one thing, and I look at the data and go, oh, okay, well the data doesn't lie, but you can't second guess.
We can talk ourselves up or talk ourselves down a lot, can't we? Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The less kind of control, the less accurate you can be with that as well. So that's what I found really interesting. I was like, oh really? That's the way it is. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of businesses are having that sort of adage, if it ain't tracked, it ain't fact, within the platform. And, if you get down to that point in a positive coaching environment, then it's only going to sharpen my sword as a professional recruiter to do things a bit better, inch by inch.
Yeah,
which I was thinking about, there are a lot of, as recruitment companies grow, there are a lot of financial challenges that they face, going from that 2-person startup through to a 5-person or 10-people team. From your experience, Guy, what are those common financial challenges, and how can they use, some of these data analytic tools that we're talking about to help navigate those tough times or tough challenges that they will see as a growing business?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think it's generally, once the thought process is all right, I want to scale my business. That's when the common pitfalls arrive, and I guess from a purely financial standpoint, it's the operational expenditure. It's a really easy one to let it get away from you, because I think there's so many tools, so many systems, so many things that you have access to, and again, talking about the marketing side, right? In terms of just blowing budgets and on branding and getting out there and wanting to get your name out there and all those sorts of things, which is all has value, but again, it would be great to not make the mistake of just go and spend the money and then look back at it and go, oh, actually, my ROI on that was pretty poor. It's thinking about it very, very structurally, and I think finding the right partners obviously is always a good win. But I think the main thing is thinking about your dollar and really being very, very stringent around every single dollar that you spend. You want to see some sort of return on it, and you're able to track it, because again, if you've got the tools and systems to be able to understand those tracking or understand the tracking, you can then see that return. You can actually see that ROI. And a common one I've seen as well is, and particularly in the temping world, when you're trying to scale or start a contracting business or a contracting book or a temp book, obviously access to funds to be able to pay for temps and obviously all the fun cash flow management conversations. Again, jumping into it and just kind of running without really understanding the challenges that may arise down the track with regards to locking yourself into certain terms or those sorts of things, because it was just easy to have access to money, just get going. It's actually, no, let me think about how I can do this. How long do I want to be in a position where I need to be borrowing money for? Or how do I want to run my business? Am I going to be a debt-centric business where I'm going to always just factor the cost of money into my business, or am I going to be, holding that pot to be able to fund, accordingly? So again, having a strategy when you start, and being really clear to that strategy, because as long as you have a strategy and you're, and you're clear with it, however much you spend is up to you to manage that strategy. I guess it's, the thing is trying to avoid just running and not having that clarity, and then, as you say, you've got 5 people in your team and you're kind of, oh wow, okay, now I'm considered, I've got a real business here, but I'm hemorrhaging money left, right, and centre, or opportunity left, right, and centre, because I haven't started with a strategy.
Yeah, I think what I've seen. Oh, sorry, BK. I was just going to say what I've seen before is one of the biggest costs that people don't often cater for is the cost of keeping somebody on.
Oh, yeah.
So without those numbers in front of me as the worker and you as my boss, Guy, on a regular basis, it can be tough to have those awkward conversations. But I think, I've seen hundreds of times before, having factual numbers in front of me when I have that, sometimes a tough conversation with one of my teammates or my boss in this case, it dilutes that because, and I think, BK, you mentioned it before, numbers don't lie. The numbers are something that can hold you accountable and say, listen, well, this is where we're up to, Andrew. How can I help you get to where you need to be, where we agreed, earlier this quarter? What do I need to do here? And numbers can also, pinpoint
the blame game, don't they?
It can, yeah. And it can really pinpoint where that learning might need to be. It could be around BD, it could be around, candidate acquisition, it could be around converting once we've got an offer on the table, wherever I'm falling, short, or maybe I'm not doing much in all of those categories, I don't know. There could be a very, very quick exit conversation perhaps. Yeah. But so many times we've seen people carry staff members for 6-9 months, sometimes longer, because they haven't had those they are tough conversations to have, but if you've got a tool by your side where there's no surprises what the conversation's got to be this week with you, Guy, because I know what the numbers are before I enter into that room.
Yes.
And we 100%. Can put a strategy together, or maybe it's time for me to go open a fish and chip shop or something different, right? So,
yeah, it's so true. So true.
So, Guy, you kind of have touched on this in the last point, but I just wanted to go a little bit deeper on how recruitment businesses can leverage particularly financial data to make more informed decisions. And Roger just talked a little bit about it there, but when they're seriously thinking about it's coming time to scale and grow, or investing in new tech, whatever it might be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think I'll kind of the two sides, the revenue side and the OPEX side, or the costs, and even actually just side point on that is the real disparity of what is considered OPEX versus a cost of goods sold versus every single agency that I've seen the structures behind, it's so different. And actually it's quite important to have a level of consistency there, because to be able to really see performance, and living into the true state of what a P&L should look like, it's really important to actually separate out what is a cost of goods sold and what is OPEX, i.e. what is the things that I need, that I have to actually make money, the cost of goods sold, versus the operational expenditure of the business, which in theory, if I turn that off, I could still run my business. And those things are actually really difficult. They can be quite difficult to differentiate. And I think, a good example of that is recruitment software. What recruitment software is absolutely critical to be successful. Right. Well, an ATS would clearly be that, right? I don't think you could run a recruitment business without an ATS. I'm sure there are out there trying to do it on spreadsheets, maybe. But reality is.
I've had the conversation before, Guy. Don't worry.
I was going to say,
one prospect, they didn't end up being a customer of ours for obvious reasons, but they were very happy. So, Andrew, why do I need this thing? I could run my business in Excel.
But it carries it in there, and you can probably
maybe.
That's the absolute. That's the absolute.
Even then, I don't know.
Not even then, but just saying that's about the only time you can probably get away with it. But you could probably make a lot more money if you did it differently, of course.
Well, yeah, that's right. Well, that's it, right? It's because there's no way you can run your life off a spreadsheet as much as people think so. But and I guess starting there and making sure you're really allocating things out accordingly. It really helps, because then you're starting from the right foundation of tracking the right financial metrics, because then gross margin percentage is actually a really relevant number for you, versus when you're throwing in the things that are not actually what could be considered a cost of goods sold or an OPEX. But then on the revenue side as well, not just lumping all of your revenue into one bucket, and I've seen that as well. Like, even if they're running 4 or 5 different revenue streams, even just separating out what's the difference between payroll and contract and temp, the insights that you can uncover around your margins is incredible. But if you lump it all together, you miss it. You just don't see this stuff,
No.
And so
one of those three things you've just named often drags businesses down, because I think I'll do my client a favor or do some payroll services, and we'll do it at a really thin rate because that's what, the bank that I've got that agreement with has told I have to do.
Yes.
But if you break those apart, you can quite quickly see. I've seen customers losing money every hour.
Well, that's it, and it's simply because they haven't separated it out and really tracked it and made sure that when they're selling a solution, they know their numbers, and I think that's. The payroll side in particular is a real gotcha that I think a lot of people have fallen into that trap.
I've been quite surprised recently. There's been a few people that I've spoken to, very small. I work with the sort of 1 to 5, 1 to 10 businesses, very very small agency owners, and quite surprised to hear people when I've talked about. I always ask them what the revenue is, and not being able to tell me what the difference between the margin and the actual revenue coming in for temp was. Like, it just all goes in the pot, and I'm like, okay, all right, we've got some work to do here. But it's quite astounding, because that can throw you out of the game straight away, can't it?
Exactly right, and again talks to the point that most people start agencies as salespeople, and so it just isn't ingrained. It just isn't ingrained in them to think that way. It's like, oh, that's what I made this month, great, and let's carry on. So, and you know what? There's actually nothing wrong with that in that initial stage, right? As a startup, you're just all about making it work. Just run, go. And wherever it takes you is where you end up. But very quickly when you have found that niche and there is a bit of consistency, just thinking about these things and knowing the implications of not tracking this stuff, because it's so hard once to unwind things, and I guess that's we've seen it in many instances, where a process has been developed for years and years, and so you've just lost 2, 3, 4, 10 years worth of opportunity of data to understand these things, because it's just so difficult to unwind.
Yes, and also if you're looking to sell, it's really hard to do that due diligence. How do you unravel all that and go, okay, my company's worth, I don't know what it's worth. It's a bit tangled up.
Yeah. I know, right? And I think this is quite a specific one, but the sort of the add backs in a merger or an acquisition from salaries perspective, or those sorts of things. And again, if you haven't got that properly structured in your P&L, it's kind of lost in there. Now, it doesn't mean it can be found, but how much easier would it be if you've already got it all kind of laid out to know, well, if I was to sell the business, these are the people that would remain to keep the business going, and therefore this chunk of money is an add back, and it helps with the valuation of the business.
It just makes sense to me, Colin, when I think about selling my first business and had no idea what was involved in the due diligence and all that kind of stuff. If you're listening to this and you're thinking about selling a business, listen to Guy. This is what because I spent, I wasn't good with data at that point, and I just spent weeks and weeks trying to prepare all this stuff, and it was just an absolute pain in the neck. And I'm sure at the end of the day, it affects what you get paid as well. So
it really does. Yeah, and it's and I was the same. Look, the only reason I can speak about this is because I've also gone through the pain of realizing as going through these transactions and different things, going, oh right, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's it. I'm definitely a learn by doing and making mistakes guy. So it's all because I've made the mistakes already. But yeah, it's. It'd be great to be able to just have not like a cheat sheet, but it is almost like a cheat sheet to go,
if you can provide customers structure around the numbers they should be looking at, and making it, I guess, too easy for them to switch it on, right? Mm-hmm. To get those numbers in front of the leadership team or the team leads or down to the recruiter level, whatever the team wants to do. Then that uptick of learning, understanding how the business works from a financial perspective can be quite painless in a lot of ways, as opposed to trying to go through that process yourself and learn all that tricky stuff that some people just haven't had the opportunity to be exposed to as a sales professional and never have needed, to be quite frank.
I understand what you need to.
I was just thinking as we were chatting, actually, are there any plans for benchmarking opportunity between, obviously not saying which customers are doing best on your platform, but I was just thinking because, some people would know what's good and what's great and what's really bad, in terms of some of the number sets. Yeah. So having hey, you're in the top 10 percentile, or hey, you're in the 50th percentile, hey, you really need to look at this number because it should be a lot better. I think would, might be a guiding light for some players.
100%. Like and again, without sort of going too much on the Kamal piece just yet, but I think the big grand plans, I suppose, for us, and acknowledging that us being able to capture a lot of this data, and really understanding agency performance, to then start to overlay that and go, right, well, I'm an agency in Brisbane who focuses on blue collar. Show me where I sit, when it comes to my fill rates or my margins even, or my demand metrics, and actually having quantitative data, which is just something that isn't there right now. We've got other solutions in market that, that offer up sort of more survey-based qualitative pieces of information. And obviously there is a lot of value to that because, quantitative doesn't tell the whole story. But I guess if you're just operating with qualitative, it does, leave, I suppose, inflating situations exposed there. So, do you know really where you sit? If, as an agency, do you really want to be saying, if you're really struggling, how bad you are struggling? But I guess, that is obviously getting better. I think that's exciting about the industry, is that we've definitely grown over the years. Obviously the likes of the LCSO and APSCO and all those organisations that really help to create a standard of excellence within our space. But having real data from systems and consolidating, certain points of that, anonymizing it obviously, and then being able to share that in a benchmarking sort of dashboard or sort of tool would be amazing. And that's obviously a big part of the Kamal roadmap, essentially, in terms of the big plans.
Yeah, that sounds really exciting. I think that's definitely missing part of the puzzle for a lot of business owners. They just don't know what good looks like. And to your point, they could be having a chat over a coffee with another business owner, and they're talking up the market or their business and seeing how it's tracking. And it's hard for some people to say, I'm actually having a real tough time at the moment. Yep. I just don't know what to do about this part of my business. It's dragging the other parts down. Whereas if I can get some hints with some comparative data from a large data set, it gives me some guiding lights there, and then I can have maybe a structured conversation with my accountant or somebody to help me push me in the right direction. There, it just sort of empowers me. Interestingly, I was watching something on YouTube last night, and the ad came up, and it was a chap targeting tool trades, and it was pretty much the conversation we've been having, that in a lot of trades people, exactly the same as recruiters, start their own might be plumbing firm or Sparky firm, and they don't know the numbers either. And this guy was saying, don't feel stupid about it. It's natural because you just haven't had to be exposed to that stuff before. You've been a worker before. Now you've got your own business. You might feel stupid talking to your accountant about all this, all these numbers. What is EBITDA? What is, gross? What's this all mean? So having, I guess, that platform or that system or a guiding light there around what great looks like, I think is really needed within the industry, because it's, I think probably only, the top 10% of the firms that we deal with have a good grasp of numbers. The rest are usually pretty sketchy until they start that journey of really getting to know the numbers.
Yeah. And I guess it's, unless they get that's true. Yeah, true. Yeah, but even then, it's just because you recruit in the accounting space doesn't necessarily mean that you might know all of it from top down.
That's
right.
That's right.
Yeah. But no, I think the interesting point there is it's not being afraid to ask the questions and not being afraid to start being uncomfortable with some of these things and acknowledging that just because you don't don't know. There's so many partners and businesses. Obviously there's the likes of RecMate, that can help with a whole range of different solutions in terms of their tech stack and marketing solutions, and then obviously other partners in the market that can provide you that expertise. You don't need to know all these things.
No.
I think the industry associations do a really good job.
Yep.
APSCO and the team have got some good programs there to start. The RCSA's got some really great programs to start your financial understandings there. So there's a couple of really good networks, subcommittees and things like that can help you rocket along. So worth checking those out as well. We had a final question lined up, but I've got a different one without notice for you, Guy. Ooh. So I was just thinking, obviously Kamal.ai, there's AI in that whole phrase there.
Yes.
Where do you see AI taking us in terms of the financial part of the business? How do you see AI playing a part in steering us, being a steward of what we should be thinking about for our recruitment firm? Yes. And do you think that will filter down to the desk level for me as a recruiter? Yeah,
no, that's a really, really, again, a good question. But I think, AI and what gets talked about 99.9% of the time is AI and process. And optimizing process, and if we think about a large majority of the AI solutions in market, particularly in the recruitment space, it's about how do I optimize or minimize the time it takes to do something in the recruitment process. Now, the AI and the Kamal journey is obviously, it is actually about how do we use tools like machine learning and advanced analytics and models and those sorts of things which form the foundation of AI to better forecast. And really that's the crystal ball, right? And I think if anyone as an owner of a recruitment agency could actually be given a crystal ball, they'd pay millions for that. And I guess the idea being that as AI and the capability of the various language models that are out there get better and better, the reality is that as we ingest more and different data sources, we're going to get to a point where we're going to have a pretty good forecasting capability. And I guess we want to be able to really leverage that and help businesses get early indication of stuff. And I think that's the really important part of this. It's not necessarily just there for me to go, well, how much money am I going to make in 12 months' time? It's actually an indicator of where my business is heading. And actually, unfortunately, a lot of the time it's early visibility of when it's not going well. And, like we know, temp contracting books, the actual real pain isn't felt today, it's felt 3, 6, 9, 12 months down the road. And I guess the AI and Kamal.ai is to go, let us tell you today that you're not on the right track and something needs to change. So that we can then help inform those upcoming challenges without it being too late. And so, that's an example of, I suppose, how AI in the construct of financial tools could be applied in that forecasting space. But then, right down to a consulting level, as you say, the forecasting out of commissions. The forecasting out of placement numbers, those sorts of things on the basis of my historical performance, my team's historical performance, my business's historical performance, the market that I operate in. There's so many different numbers that we can ingest to start to play around with. And so that's the really exciting part. Like, I think I see a lot of value, obviously, in the AI tools that are in the market today, to really help streamline processes. But I really like the idea of helping to shape the crystal ball and really provide at least a starting position for that. And again, not to necessarily be able to hold me to account to say, well, that number that you said that was going to be 12 months down the road, it isn't that number, because I don't think we'll ever get there. There's too much human elements in the recruitment game. But at the very least, as an indicator, which is super exciting.
Yeah, I think it will be very exciting, because I see a time in the future where there'll be some sort of communication, if it's a whisper in my ear or the message pops up saying, "Hey, Andrew, send 2 more resumes this month and you'll hit your target."
Yeah,
that
that's
kind of
it.
thing there. It'll come down to that level there about what I need to do today.
Yes.
And then, maybe a weekly snapshot. "Hey, Andrew, you're tracking well for this quarter. Probably need to do a bit more BD work to pull in a few extra jobs, because you've got these 2 that are finishing up now. They're at decision stage, offer stage. So you need to start marketing again, or whatever the numbers are from what I'm putting into the system, because it knows, to your point earlier, what my past success rates are, conversion rates, all that kind of stuff is all in there. My general, if it's a perm desk or a mixed desk, what my general sales numbers are for each perm placement I do, or the margin numbers for my contracting, the average length of the contracts I place, all that kind of stuff there is all in the numbers. So I think it's going to be a really exciting time in the next couple of years where that starts to rapidly translate into real life guidance for our teams, right down to the desk level.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, that's how good would it be, right? To be able to turn up to work and it kind of just, when you have those moments like, what do I do next?
Yeah. Sure, I'm sure it'll get there. Well, there's no reason why I can't with the different tool sets that are available now, and the natural language model interface that we've got available to us, and there's just so many things that'll come into play.
Guy, super, super interesting stuff. I've been sitting here really wanting to ask you more about Kamal, and now is your opportunity. Let's hear it. Bring it on. And I'm also keen to know the size of market, or size of company rather, that you're really focusing in on. Yeah, keen to hear all about it.
Yeah, cool. No, awesome. Well, I won't. I could talk all day about it, so I'll keep it really succinct. Very passionate, obviously very passionate about it. So look, Kamal, as I say, it's essentially it is a consolidated recruitment platform, and it's a data platform that we've developed to solve the really challenging and frustrating problem of siloed data and siloed reporting solutions. So, we recognise that each one of those systems that a recruiter will use generally will have some sort of reporting or analytics capability tied to it, but it's always pointed to one system. So you're only ever getting that information out of your ATS or out of your payroll or timesheeting tool or out of your finance tool. But there's never anything that talks to each other and actually is showing that fully consolidated, integrated view. And so the idea of Kamal, it's essentially a one-stop shop where you will be able to go into and see your sales, your operational, compliance, and financial sort of reporting, and be able to consume in one place. And I guess the really powerful part of it is, we only ingest obviously the relevant data sources that would really help a business owner to kind of move forward. So it's not as if we're just dumping all the information in one area and then you're kind of having to work through it all. It's very slick in terms of its interface to have a very quick, easy, what do I do next approach to it, because again, it's built for owners and leaders, right, who may not necessarily get all the stuff from a conceptual standpoint. It's like, okay, I want to be able to understand how I can get the most out of my data, so let me use a tool like Kamal to tell me, and that's really how it's built.
Amazing.
So and size of market. Look, I think we've kind of pitched it sort of anyone sort of 5 consultant up, to be honest. Okay. We've got some. We've got some interesting conversations actually with some pretty large enterprise-sized recruitment agencies at the moment, acknowledging that they may have quite large teams doing a lot of this stuff at the moment. And so, how Kamal could potentially plug into there to support. But I guess our sweet spot would definitely be that sort of 5 to say 100 consultant level, I think would be the real,
great.
Which is obviously a very large sweet spot. But yeah, it's I think anything less than 5, yeah.
Global,
yes. So we New Zealand based. So Kamal was born out of NZ. But obviously we've got customers in New Zealand at the moment. We've got some customers in Australia. The idea being, though, is this is absolutely a thing that we want to take globally. We feel in the recruitment industry we haven't seen anything, done quite a lot of digging around it, haven't really seen anything else, even, in other regions that kind of does what we do. We're very, very keen to sort of push far and wide as quickly as we can.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing it. Yeah, I'm really excited to see where it goes. I can see so much application for it. You've obviously hit on something, and you've come out of the recruitment space as well. I think so many people we speak to on this show, they've had a problem in their business they've wanted to solve, and then all of a sudden they're software developers.
Yep. Well, I wouldn't quite go far as say that. Although it's not me doing the development, I wouldn't go very far, but yeah.
they're in that space, I should say. So, well, that's really exciting.
No, sure.
Maybe down the track a little bit when things evolve for you, we can catch up and see where you're at, how that's all evolving, because this whole world is moving so quickly. And Andrew and I are keen to connect you guys with what the amazing stuff you're doing with the people, the end users, and solve those problems. So thank you very, very much for your time, and we're really excited to see where you went. Well, not where you end up. It's a continual journey, isn't it? But where it takes you.
Yeah.
We should ask you as well. How do people get a hold of you if they want to find out more?
Yes. So our website, just www.kamal.ai, you can find us there. Obviously, we're on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. So my name is Guy Day. You can connect in any way you like. And at the moment, as I say, look, I'm very much front footing the initial conversation. So it'll be me that you'd be getting to talk to initially. We're frantically on the hiring buzz at the moment, which is very exciting. So actually, I could do a little plug there too if you
anybody who wants to join
the Kamal team, come have a chat. So, you'll find me in all the usual places recruiters hang out.
Nice work.
Well, thanks again. Good luck with everything, and we'll see you down the track a little bit, hopefully.
Yeah, no, sounds good, and thank you very much for having me on. Appreciate
thanks,
the opportunity.
Guy. Appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode of the Tech Savvy Recruiter. If you'd like to stay up to date with the latest recruitment trends and insights, make sure that you remember to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And also, if you'd like to speak to Andrew about turning your tech stack into your secret weapon, or myself around creating an agency that delivers you more money, more meaning, and more freedom, we'd absolutely love to chat. Reach out to us on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for your support. We look forward to seeing you next time.